Welcome to Convo Lounge, Expression, Exposure, Experience. Another episode of the Convo Lounge podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Bakang Keitumetse. We are continuing to build our community online. So follow us on our social media platforms, Convo Lounge Africa, and get an industry research report that we are publishing every month on the Convo Lounge communities. Thank you very much for being here. And today we are going to be having yet another conversation around issues of research and how research is being used to solve societal problems or problems within our economy. This is how we go on here at Convo Lounge to showcase the high value talent that we have here in Botswana who are working on these different solutions. And today I have a PhD scholar, a PhD fellow, somebody who has been in the field of research for quite some time. And I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and tell us a bit of a background of how she got to be to take this path with her career. Thank you very much for joining us, Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So my name is Natasha. My first name is Onalenna. And I didn't know this until I had to get an injection as a kid. Okay. And then they were like, okay, oh, by the way, your name is Onalenna. So my name is Onalenna Natasha Moraka.
Yeah.
And I
Now, maybe when you became a city girl, you're like, Natasha, yeah. I'll stick to Natasha.
Yeah, so I am from Sebina, but I grew up mostly in Gaborone. I've lived in Tlokeng since I was in Form 2, and before that, around Extension 4. So right now, I am a PhD student based at the Botswana Harvard AIDS Institute Partnership. I have registered with the University of Botswana. I recently got my MSc degree in Medical Virology, and I have a BSc in BSc General Science, which was in biology and chemistry. So, mostly I do research on infectious diseases, but I also can do some research and statistical analysis, bioinformatical analysis, phylogenetics. The research works.
Yeah. Has this always been that career path that you've always wanted to take, an interest in sciences, or you just find yourself, your parents telling you, Mwanaka, you should go to school and pass your maths and your sciences because that's how you're going to become a doctor?
Well, the answer is yes and no. Yeah. I thought I was going to be an engineer. I was very interested in doing civil engineering or industrial engineering, and then physics humbled me.
Yeah.
First year BSc, I got a 50%, and I told my mother, you know what? I think I'm done with physics.
Yeah.
So, and then really when I was in high school, I really loved physics. I passed it. Everything was good and gravy. I also really liked biology, but I felt like it was too many terms, too much cramming, too many systems to look into. But as I continued with my first year of BSc, then that's when I developed my passion for doing anything basic science, biology related. So I think by the year 2, I focused into doing a double major of biology and chemistry, and that's when my passion for virology and looking at microorganisms actually, sprouted.
You just mentioned your mother having, those conversations with your mother. Have you always had those conversations about your career or about your academics with your parent, or just talk about that?
Yeah. So my mom is an academic.
Yeah.
My mom has an MBA. My mom did IT. She's one of the first women to do IT at the University of Botswana. And she also was the head of ICT at Botswana Insurance Company for a very long time. Okay. So she loves IT. My sister is public admin, political law, all those things that I don't understand. And science. So I'm always confusing people about what I'm doing, including my own family. So yes, we've had those conversations. Obviously, being raised by a single parent, they want what's best for you. So they push you to do your passion. I don't think my mother drove me towards biology and medical virology, but she did drive me towards wanting to better myself because I was inspired by her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's get into how then you got to venture or specialize into the kind of research that you do right now, looking at after you have done or completed your studies, why get into infectious diseases research?
Okay, so my journey began at UB.
Yeah.
The fourth year of BSc, you have to do a research project. So I approached Dr. Tsimako Johnston. She's at Baylor College of Education, Texas something, right now. And she's the one who linked me with the Botswana Harvard partnership. So I met Dr. Simani Razizi there, and I guess he was impressed by my presentation, and then I got to do my undergrad there. So when you get to such an establishment, you get to learn a lot already. They're just putting in the deep end. You have to figure out what HIV amazing, mugging. It gets overwhelming, but over time you get to learn. And there's this thing of mentorship. Getting a good mentor is something that kind of sparks your interest. Okay, this man. Yes. So for me as a scientist, I think I've always had an inquisitive mind.
And when you're talking about getting from your varsity and getting into such a place to continue on doing your research. And at the time when you were doing your research for your final year, what were you looking at, or the topic that you wanted to research on at that time, right? Were you looking at something that could get you a quick, good marks? Because I believe that majority of us really would be there to solve something quickly so we can get a good mark and get a grade and get a degree without actually having to research something that would bring value to the economy, to the industry.
Yeah. So for me, this is a very weird story because it's linked to something very personal, but in a way, it's like if you're spiritual, yes. So I lost one of my baby cousins.
Yes.
Her mom passed away, and then and she was diagnosed with HIV.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what lying day in, day out, in and out of hospital.
Yes.
And then lo and behold, my fourth year, I got this interest in looking at pediatric HIV. And, kids' immune systems are very weak and brittle. And it's very hard for you to be pumping antiretrovirals in a child because you might shut down the organs, stuff like that. So I wanted to find out what is the best dose to give kids? How do the immune responses develop as they grow? And so on and so forth. And that was my proposal. Yeah. But sometimes how planning, then things change. I ended up looking into a different type of proposal because of lack of samples. So I went and looked at one of the genes that is upregulated. It's expressed more when a person is diagnosed with HIV, and the HIV infection drives the gene to kill the cells within the body as a protective mechanism. So I looked at, so for people who are now recently infected versus 2 years down the line, what are the levels of expression of this gene, and how does that impact the clinical outcomes? So clinical outcomes can be CD4 count. HIV infects the CD4 cells, and viral load, the amount of virus in your blood. So that's what I was looking at in undergrad. And then potentially I developed other proposals that went back to pediatric HIV. Yes. And that was my MSc project. I was the first person to look at pediatric HIV drug resistance within the country and how that can inform policy to test and screen for HIV drug resistance in kids, because that parents sometimes, by the time mothers, by the time they transmit the virus to the child, that means the viral load is very high. Yes. And this could be because maybe they didn't know, they didn't test, they were not on antiretrovirals yet, and then that will affect the medicine that you can give to the child. Yes. So
was it then a pilot of the study that you were doing, or there actually is a way in which it's currently is being implemented to inform policies like you'd mentioned?
So the end goal for most research is evidence-based research.
Yes.
To change policy.
Yes.
So mine was a bit of a pilot. There are other studies that are going on that complement that work, and eventually the policies are bound to change. This is why we have new antiretrovirals being introduced in the country. People used to have 5,000 pills. Now they only have one a day. Yes. So these are some of the things that, when you have a baseline, because there's a major gap. Despite all the work that is done in these individual institutions, there's a major gap in infectious disease research within the country because of several factors. But I think having that baseline information helps.
And what are some of those factors, though, the challenges that you are experiencing in doing this line of work in actually getting to achieve the goal that you're trying to reach?
So most of them were infrastructure. I'm saying where because since COVID, people are just like, lab scientists, you guys, now we see what you're doing. So it really does help. We get a lot of external funding, and now even the ministry is sensitized to say, okay, we need high range equipment in order to do such research.
Yeah. So now let's get into the current work that you are doing in terms of your research for your doctorate. All right. I think you're continuing on the same path of trying to find solutions to the different problems around infectious diseases. What is the current study that you are undertaking, and how are you going about it?
Okay, so my PhD research right now, I call it the Tekudiso study.
Yes.
It's actually a thing. We're getting ethics approval soon.
Yes.
So, okay, we are targeting people who are newly diagnosed with HIV within the Botswana setting. Botswana is one of the best countries in terms of antiretroviral therapy. So you'll wonder who is still transmitting. So identifying these people who are now getting infected, even though people are taking their drugs and viral suppressed. There's this 95 targets by the UNAIDS to say by the year 2030, we should have eliminated transmission. Botswana has surpassed that.
Yes.
We are the top 3 in the continent. Yeah. So we are at 95, 98, 98, which is 95% of the Botswana population know that status. 98% are on treatment, and then 98% are virally suppressed. So that 95, why is it so low?
Yeah.
Why don't people know that status? Yeah. So you identify those people, look at the hotspots, and then look at targeted prevention and targeted disease management. Yeah. So the study overall is looking at, one, from a public health point of view, who are the people who are still getting this? How can we fix it? And then from a virology type of point of view, what are the characteristics of the virus itself that predispose people to getting infected in this era?
Yes. Yeah. And when we look at the different, in terms of the industry in itself or the economy in itself, infectious diseases, what impact could it possibly have in bringing down, the economy, or getting the economy not to strive in the length in which we would have wanted or hoped for it to strive in?
Health
Yes.
is a measure of development.
Yes.
You will see that and you'll see that you have a lot of outbreaks of disease. You have a lot of outbreaks in children. You'd have a lot of outbreaks caused by environmental factors. So that in itself, what do you mean, affects the economy?
Yes.
Because you have, one, the sick person has to take days off work.
Yes.
The person taking care of that person has to take days off work. So you're having a dent in human capital.
Yes.
And then also there's a word that they use, these economists. It's called the trade openness, something like that. You will not want to trade with a country that has a bad health reputation because you are risking infection. So for example, with COVID, you shut down a lot of borders, and then obviously you're not getting money in and out of the country. And this is due to a lot of viral and other microorganism pandemics and epidemics.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to continue more conversation here with Miss Natasha Moraka, just to talk about her work in researching around infectious diseases. This is the Convo Lounge podcast. Remember to get in contact with us on +267 765 1992, or follow us using the hashtag Convo Lounge Africa on our different social media platforms.
Convo Lounge, expression, exposure, experience.
Right, welcome back to this episode of the Convo Lounge podcast, where we are having a conversation with Miss Natasha Moraka to talk about her work in infectious diseases research. And when you mentioned earlier on, you did say that there has been people who have been instrumental in shaping your career in the form of mentorship. Take us through that journey. Who got to identify who?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I was identified by Dr. Johnston, who introduced me to Dr. Sebina. He was then the director at the BHP. And then I got to meet Dr. Sikuli Lemoyo, the one who discovered Omicron with his team. And then I got to meet my other mentors like Professor Shaheen Lockman at the Harvard AIDS Institute or the Harvard School of Public Health. And she's like one of the best people in the world, honestly. So these mentors that I have are multiple. And I even have mentors who are younger than me. Hey, mentorship is not necessarily having a boss. It's having someone who believes in you and wants to help you achieve whatever goal that you have. So I have a lot of mentors for different things. For example, I go to church. I have a person who I can speak to who's younger than me right now. I go to work and I have mentors at that workplace. But all these things groom me towards what I want to achieve, which is bettering public health, combating infectious diseases. Because we tend to think that Armageddon, for example, is going to be a big flame. It could just be just one tiny virus leveling a population. So I think mentorship is like raising a child. It takes a village, really. And I really want to thank them for the journey that they helped me brew. And I'm still 1% there.
Yes. And what do you think is the recipe to having a successful mentorship relationship with someone, right? Getting to be handpicked from multiple other people and actually getting to maintain that mentorship or that relationship with between a mentor and a mentee.
I think this question comes up a lot when people ask me, why do your bosses help you with school? Oh, was in a school. So it's really just roles. You have to understand your role as a person. You are interviewing me. You have to know what kita sharing. You have to know what we're now sharing, and then we have to have a conversation. So this happens with mentorship. You identify a mentor. You cannot vibe with someone. For example, you find that this person is brilliant on paper. Then you meet them and your attitudes don't match. So openness, open-mindedness, and communication. If there's there are lines that can't be crossed, but you have to have seamless conversation between you and your mentor and understand your roles, perform them well. It really doesn't take much to be a scientist. I'm going to tell you guys the truth. All you have to do is just do your part. Be inquisitive, learn from people, be open-minded to learning from everyone around you. So I think that's what establishes a good mentorship relationship.
And there's oftentimes a talk about, like I mentioned earlier, on our academic research or academic assignments at school. We do it to just get marks and not really look at issues that would contribute to the economy. Like, for example, now with the Convo Lounge, what we want to do is to encourage research that actually has some sort of impact in the economy, right? So that perhaps maybe we could work on a research that is going to bring solutions to a product of a certain company or getting an employment opportunity for another young person. And I think for us to achieve that, we need to groom the next generation of researchers in our country, more especially that Botswana is trying to move towards a knowledge-based economy. And I'm just wondering if it's something that you are contributing to, and if at all you are, how are you contributing to grooming the next generation of researchers?
Okay, it's a tough one. I have mentored some of the undergraduate students who come for attachment, who come in through the way I came in. You identify a supervisor, and then someone will say, okay, look at Harvard, if you want to do this particular thing, that's what you would do. The other person goes to vet lab, the other one goes to TB lab, and so on and so forth. So I've mentored people from proposal stage, not knowing what is HIV up until they have their own project. They do it themselves. I always tell them, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Similar to COVID, I was one of the first people to start testing for COVID within the country. I was in the national testing team. So when more people came in, because we needed more effort, they came in with just maybe medical lab science. So you have to mentor them and be patient with them and help them learn, so that even when they do these experiments, they don't do any mistakes and they don't work out of fear. So I think that's how I think I've contributed a little bit. I have people on Facebook asking me, the scholarship, how do I go about it? I'll send you my personal drafts that I've had and tell you, okay, no, how long I let this background apply for this thing, and I think this person would be better suited to help you. So I think that's my little contribution towards raising the next scientist.
And I think mentioning that in terms of the skills that you need to develop in you, there's oftentimes a talk about tertiary students or graduates, the skills that they learn not really being applicable to the industry right now. What are those that you need to have in you to strive in the infectious diseases research line?
Okay. So far, we have a lot of sequencing being done. We have a lot of biostatistics, and we have a lot of, testing microorganisms. It's very wide. Microbiology is very wide.
Yeah.
So you have to identify your niche. You can't go into looking into TB thinking you're going to do an ELISA, for example. You have to look at the organism of interest and be open-minded, like I said. Again and again, just be willing to learn. All the skills that you learn at varsity, especially at the University of Botswana, not that all the skills, you'll find that in one point in time, even though you're going to find a need for that. And there's always room for growth.
Yeah.
So learn everything you can. Look at what you're comfortable with. Microbiology is all about measuring very, very, very small volumes of stuff.
Yeah.
So you need to know how to handle your shaking. Sometimes people shake for various reasons. And those are some of the skills that you learn while you're in university. But because it's so many people doing the same thing, how will you just be chilling at the back? We did a music group project. When you get into the work environment, it's going to show. So when you get into a work environment, be open-minded to say, okay, so the skills cannot be specific. There's so many.
Yeah. And then in terms of the people, students who are currently doing research or doing or finding interest in this line of work, your infectious diseases research, what could be that advice which you can give them, where the starting point would be to getting into such an industry? I understand right now there's so many young people who are applying to go to varsity. I don't know if they now understand what it is that they are looking to study, or they're just looking at their qualifications to say, hey, how about 40 points? 40 points. Let me just get another thing. I'll see where we get to.
Yeah. A lot of the people who we started with left.
Yeah.
Semester 1. I'm not even going to lie. All the pre-med. I used to think I wanted to do medicine. Yes. I applied.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, okay, I'm not good enough. But then in the end, I realized that this is actually not what I wanted to do. I can't handle blood. I want it in a test tube, not on the present.
Yes.
So if you get to varsity, be open-minded. I'll keep repeating the same thing again because that's how I think I got where I am today.
Yes.
You are never going to learn enough.
Yes.
And also you can't learn what you already know.
Yeah.
Right? So someone said that to me the other day. It was profound because I was struggling. So you will find your niche if you open your mind and say, okay, this is my strong suit and this is not. I can't say there's a handbook to say, come and do science. If you are doing science and you feel like, okay, I want to go and do business, it's really okay.
Yeah. And you did mention earlier on that science is a very easy thing to do, but statistics would show, like you're saying, BSc at UB is one of the courses that has the highest FDs or dropouts at the first semester.
Yeah.
Where do people get it wrong?
People get it wrong by thinking with the Form 5 mentality.
Yeah.
When you get to institutions like that, like UB, like BUSed in Botswana, there's a lot of self-teaching that you have to do. So develop that culture of learning on your own. Independent learning is very important, I think, in many aspects. Yeah. So this is why people thrive. They learn and find out, oh, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. Go for mentorship, talk to people. Yeah. And also there's a lot of anxiety and pressure that comes with starting in the science field.
Yes.
Across the board.
Yeah.
So it's okay to struggle. It's okay to find it hard. It's okay to FD and come back.
Yeah.
So also the passion has to be there.
Yeah.
I always tell my students, I have students. I always tell my students, it has to come from you. I can tell you what to do and you'll do it.
Yes.
But if you don't want to do it, it's never going to be something you're going to want to continue with and also teach the next generation of students. So I think being a scientist is all about the passion, wanting to help, wanting to find solutions, and being open-minded.
Yes. But in terms of the future, when we look at the infectious diseases industry or research, what potential do you see it having in actually bringing a difference to the economy right now?
It's already happening.
Yeah.
Right now, the ministry is sensitized. COVID has really switched the board in terms of research. Infectious disease research needs robust machinery. It needs researchers. It needs people who understand the subject matter. So right now we have high quality machines being donated from Western companies, some even being bought by the ministry. The National Public Health Lab is now having maybe 4 or 5 detection machines. Detection is another topic and podcast on its own. So, machinery, infrastructure, and also human capital.
Yeah.
Investing in that can help make the most difference. Preparedness of a country is the reason why they don't get as hard hit as they do in low to middle income countries. So you'll find that when COVID hit in South Africa, they shut down productions and everything, but then that didn't really shake them as much. And then when it came here, a lot went down. Yeah. We were not prepared. By the time it was post-Delta, we used to work double shift. You would find a sample at the border, it comes here to Gaborone, goes back to Lebatse overnight. And imagine how much that is making, pulling money out of the ministry, pulling money out of the companies. Yeah. So I think, investing in infrastructure and researchers can help make much difference.
And I guess with that enabling environment being created, it just only is for us to look at those opportunities and tap into them as young people to see how then we could develop ourselves to align to the different opportunities that would be available for young people there. Just as a parting words from you, what would be your last words to encourage a young person listening in right now onto the Convo Lounge podcast to seize the opportunities that would actually be presented? Like you mentioned, there has been, that difference that has been brought around the health industry in our country. And that means that there's going to be so many opportunities that are going to come. How do they identify such opportunities and actually align to those opportunities?
The internet is your friend. The internet is your friend and science is monad. Yeah. So the encouragement that I would have for young people is just always look for opportunities. Look for mentors. Talk to the next person. You won't lose anything by just sending out an email. I have a student right now who literally sent me a message, text message. Yeah. And says she got my number from the Stellenbosch website. Yeah. And now she's doing her internship at the company that I work at because I saw this person has potential. So let's give her an attachment so that she learns. Yeah. So I think that would be the advice that I'm going to give people. And remember that even Einstein was a child at one point. You understand? You start from a young age, you become inquisitive. Here you are presenting. Who would have thought? You probably thought you were going to do maybe agriculture. Yes. You understand?
Or be a soldier.
Imagine. It can still happen. Yeah. So when you grow up, you just keep learning as much as you can. Yeah. And remember that even the people you look up to started where you are now.
Fantastic and powerful. Thank you very much for this conversation, Natasha, and all the best with your future endeavors. And I guess that we will continue to have these conversations and see how we can further develop the young people who are upcoming to gather more interest on research. Because at the end of the day, like we're saying, we believe that research is actually the solution that we need to bring down the high numbers of unemployment in our country. And I guess with Convo Lounge, we shall be achieving all of that. Get to interact with us on our social media platforms using the hashtag Convo Lounge Africa or the number +267 7651 992 on WhatsApp. Bye.
Convo Lounge. Expression, exposure, experience.